let's go with his promo video.
I'm freezing your rent as the next mayor of New York City. Let's plunge into the details.
See what I mean about charisma? Like just pause this for a second. He made a campaign video in a full suit going in and doing the polar bear plunge at Coney Island, jumping right into the water. Right? Now watch. Continue watching.
More than 2 million New Yorkers live in rent-stabilized units, and their rents are set by the Rent Guidelines Board. The board is made up of 9 members, and the mayor appoints each one. Doing this, Eric Adams' board has raised the rent every year he's been in office. Makes sense for a guy who said, I am real estate. Currently, 8 of Adams' 9 appointees' terms are up and could be replaced tomorrow, and that's exactly what I would do. Rent freezes have happened before. De Blasio's board did it 3 times. I would do the same every year, only appointing those who understand that landlords are doing just fine. Last March, the board found that landlord incomes rose by nearly twice the increase of their expenses. The median income for a rent-stabilized household is $60,000 a year. Any rent hike could push them out of this city. For those landlords who need a little extra help, there's a city fund they can apply to. So here's to a new year, a new mayor, and the same rent.
All right, so that's kind of funny because he's like, landlords are doing just fine. And then a few moments later in his own video, he's like, well, for those landlords that need a little extra help. Okay, well, how many of those are there? Why would they need a little extra help? What is it about their circumstance that is causing them to need some help? Right? They've got their rent set at whatever they think it is. What's the deal? Well, he doesn't say. Of course not. It's a campaign video, right? But I just want to point that out, that even in his own video, he's already got a conflict. Now, I thought this from this, and I've got it in the show notes. You can go and watch his whole interview from Forbes. But I thought this video clip here was kind of interesting. It's very, very quick. So I'm going to play it because I think it provides a certain level of value in evaluating his policy prescriptions and what's going on.
I think ultimately I'm guided by outcomes.
I'm going to play that one more time.
I think ultimately I'm guided by outcomes.
Okay, so he said he is guided by outcomes. Good. We're going to keep that in mind because my first question is, are you really? So let's play this next clip and just keep that in mind. Okay? And let's see. Yes. So here is him talking about freezing rents in that same interview.
So for the first thing, freezing the rent, that's not something that requires any fiscal output from the city. It's something that's determined by the Rent Guidelines Board, composed of 9 members. The mayor picks each of those members. They determine each year whether rents rise or whether they stay the same. The previous mayoral administration froze the rent 3 times. So this has clear historical precedent.
Okay. So what he's talking about is if you go back and you look at the mayors, he's not talking about Eric Adams. He's talking about Bill de Blasio. I believe it's Bill de Blasio. It might have been Bloomberg. I think or maybe it was Bloomberg. I might have to look at. But one of the previous mayors to the current mayor, they froze rents 3 times. So he's like, look, it's been done before. We can do it again. Okay? Fine. Like, I don't disagree with the issue of precedent. And presumably, that's what a Rent Guidelines Board would do. They would determine, can you increase rents? And these are for stabilized homes, by the way. These aren't just for everybody. Rent stabilization. And so then they might say, okay, well, how much can you increase them? And, and they may have some other things that they work out. I haven't really dug deep. But I did find this. This is very interesting. The Rent Guidelines Board was established in 1969. It's been around for 56 years. Well, let me tell you, and you can go look this up yourself. Affordability, housing affordability issues, they go back to at least 2000, probably beyond that. Okay? So you had Michael Bloomberg, who served 3 terms from 2002 to 2013. You had Bill de Blasio. And by the way, Michael Bloomberg was a Republican. Bill de Blasio, he served, a Democrat, served 2 terms from 2015 to 2021. I think I got my numbers off a little bit. I think it's 2014 for Bloomberg. Eric Adams then comes in. He's a Democrat. He's currently the mayor. He has served one term. He hasn't finished it. It would be from 2022 all the way to the end of this year, 2025. So you have a decade of Democrats and 56 years in total. Yet, all through that time, you can go back through history and you can find that New York City was dealing with affordability issues. So at what point does Mamdani tell people this board cannot solve your problems? Further, if his current criticism is that Adams appointed bad people, however he defines it, because remember, he said it in his video. He's like, look, he voted in this board, and then they increased rents by up to 9%. And he makes it sound like it's a bad thing, right? Like, oh, 9%, they did it. They shouldn't have done it. Okay, but he doesn't tell you why. Like, why was that a bad idea, right? What was it? What was it about their decision? Because it's a board of like 9 people, and they've got like 5 of them are regular people, 2 of them are like real estate people, and they got a breakdown of who these 9 people are supposed to be. But this is a board. They all are appointed by the mayor. Presumably, the mayor has a little bit of influence. To what degree? It's hard to say. But we did establish a moment ago that socialism, they established in the video that socialism is prone to corruption. I would argue that any system is prone to corruption, because any system could have somebody that says, I want this thing. I'm going to get this person to give me this thing in a way that usurps the way the system is designed. However that system is, whether it's communism, socialism, democratic socialism, whether it's capitalism or something else. Like, there's always going to be somebody. Like, we talk about a capitalist society. We talk about, what do we talk about? Lobbyists all the time. You know, the idea of our Congress voting is supposed to be on the basis of what their constituents want. Yet, we pretty much all know that lobbyists have a lot more weight than they should. Okay? So even our own system has, you could call it corruption, you could call it something else, but it has elements in it that are not working the way that we think it's designed to work. That's all of them. So throughout this whole system, this whole 56 years, you consistently have problems with rent and affordability. Why? Well, we're going to get to that in a moment. But doesn't that kind of suggest that whatever system they have isn't working? Oh, you know what? I didn't put myself there. Doesn't it kind of suggest that whatever system they have is not working? Now, when I started looking into this, I pulled up the document that he referred to, and it's like it's pretty heavy. You know, it's not a light read, and I got a little bogged down in it. Let's see, how big was that file? Let me see if I can't look it up here. Let's see. That document that he's referring to was 41 pages, but it was pretty hefty. It had a lot of numbers and metrics and data. And it's not that I can't read that, but at the end of the day, I don't live in New York. And, you know, trying to identify this information, then maybe go look it up and verify and say, okay, do I agree with their assessment? Is this what the data says? That's a lot of not useful information for this podcast. So ultimately, I'm just going to focus on, okay, you said that if you said that you are guided by outcomes. Well, the outcomes seem to consistently not be what you want from this board. If you're guided by outcomes, then perhaps the board is no good. If you're telling me that the most recent mayor, the current mayor, after this entity has been around for 56 years, can go in and appoint people and then just do what he darn well pleases, then doesn't that kind of suggest this system is not working? It's fundamentally flawed. And yet, he wants to work within it. What does that tell you? Is he really that serious about it? Or is he just like, I can put a Band-Aid on it and I will fix it? I think that's kind of what, we need to look and ask the tough questions and say, like, if I was a New Yorker and I was talking to him, I would say, look, man, this board is 56 years old. Tell me a time tell me any 1 year where this thing balanced out the needs of renters and the needs of landlords very well. Give me the last year that happened. I don't want to hear about when somebody did or did not freeze a rent, because freezing a rent will often be like, okay, what's the circumstances? Why are you freezing a rent? Right? Like what's going on in New York City? What's going on in the world, perhaps, that makes you believe that freezing the rent is a good idea? Because what is freezing rent? At the end of the day, that is telling a landlord that you cannot increase your prices. And guess what? Their costs still go up. If I'm a landlord and I'm getting like $1,200, just for making up a number, $1,200 from rent from somebody, my mortgage has to be paid. My, any city taxes that I have to pay, for the property, they still have to be paid. They can go up. More importantly, if I need to call out a plumber, those plumber prices might go up and I have to pay them, right? And if I'm not making because he said like, okay, landlords are fine, but what does that mean? Are they raking in millions and millions of dollars and they're just sitting like fat cats, lighting their cigars with $100 bills? Is that what's going on? Or are many of them barely getting by? I mean, he did point out that there will be relief for landlords that need help, which means there are landlords that are not raking in tons and tons of money. So I don't think this system is working at all. You've got people that, are struggling and their rent is going up, and the argument is, okay, the rent is taking up too giant of a portion of their income. The argument that you're going to see mostly is, okay, well, rent is going up and incomes haven't risen. They haven't kept pace. They haven't risen with the same percentage. And there's good reason for that. We're not going to get into that right now because it's too much of a detour. Okay. But what I'm trying to get to you is, like, this system really isn't serving people. And we're not really asking the tough questions. Okay. But I think the toughest question here would be, is this system really the one we need? Right? Now, again, I took a deep dive. I tried to take a deep dive into the numbers, and there's just so many numbers. And then, the problem with numbers is if somebody says like a statement like landlords are doing just fine, then I go dig up the number and I say, okay, well, landlords are only, they're only getting this much. But then somebody else might say, okay, but landlords over here are getting this much. So if you look at that data, the what they call it, core Manhattan, that's where incomes, rental incomes have risen the most, far more than other areas of the city. So how does that affect policy? Well, that's a conversation you got to have, right? And that's why I'm not diving too deep into this, because you got the 5 boroughs, and it's a lot more than I can really cover. Hopefully some New Yorker out there that's also a libertarian can dive into this and can summarize, the nuts and bolts, and hopefully they will. But I'm just questioning the whole system altogether. I'm like, maybe this board isn't so good. And that's going to be important here in just a moment. Okay. So the next item is affordable housing. Okay, so I've addressed that. No, let me back up a little bit. So how would a libertarian deal with rent? How does a libertarian, like in a libertarian world, how do we deal with the landlords and the tenants? We would simply say a landlord can charge whatever they want, and then a tenant can either pay for it or they don't, right? And that might sound cruel, and you might be like, "Oh, you have no idea what you're talking about. I shouldn't listen to you at all." Okay, let's back up a little bit. So let's see. I got a spare mouse over here. So I'm going to put this mouse up. I'm going to show you this mouse. So I've used this analogy before. So let's say that I want to sell you this mouse, and I want to sell it to you for $5. The question becomes, will you pay for it? And if you say yes, then the next question we can ask is, why did you choose to pay $5 for this mouse? Most people would probably say something along the lines of, it was worth $5. That is absolutely incorrect. The correct answer is, if you choose to buy this from me for $5, it means that you value the mouse more than your $5. Now, let's say you negotiate and you say, DL, $5 is a bit cheap. It's used. I don't know how well the battery's going to last. So how about I give you $3? let's say I agree. The same concept applies. I have decided that I would rather have your $3 than I would have this mouse. So we make a trade. That is fundamentally how any transaction operates. Now you might say, well, people are forced to. What if I don't have a mouse and I'm desperate for one? So that again, you still determined that you would rather have the mouse than your $5 or the $3 or whatever price that we've agreed upon. And there is a point where even your desperation will override whether or not you actually purchase the mouse. So if I said, I want to sell this mouse for $30, then you might first laugh at me and go, no way, I'm not even going to talk to this guy. He's a clown, right? But let's say that you're at least willing to talk to me about it. You might say, DL, how about $25? And I might be really insistent and go, no, I want 30 and I'm not taking a penny less. And you might say, yeah, I'd rather keep my money. I can go buy a $25 mouse from this other guy, right? Because you valued at least some portion of that money more than you did having the mouse. You would rather have your full $30 than the mouse and then figure it out and then deal with the situation that you're in. The same applies for rent. Why do I say that? And we're gonna see a little video here in a minute. Because that ends up creating what we call an equilibrium, right? You want to pay the least amount for whatever it is I'm selling. I want you to pay the most amount for whatever it is I'm selling. We find some equilibrium somewhere in between where we're both happy. And that happiness can vary. If I'm dying of thirst, I might be willing to give you $100 for a 4-ounce glass of water. But if I just drank a whole bottle of water and I'm not thirsty at all, I might not be willing to give you $1 for 4 ounces of water because I might be like, yeah, my thirst is quenched. I'm good. So it's important to understand how transactions work. And for libertarians, we look at it, we say, it is your money to make a decision based on however you want. It is my property to make a decision based on however I want. This goes back to self-ownership. Self-ownership for a libertarian means you also own things that you produce, right? Or maybe not what you produce, but the things that come from your labor. So if I go to work and let's say I build widgets, that's the common analogy, or, mouse. I put together mice, right? I'm part of the production line and I help snap them together. The pieces come to me, I put them together, snap them together, put them back on the line, they go down, they get packaged up, they get shipped out, right? Okay, well, that's my labor and I'm going to get paid for that labor. Because it was my labor, I own the money that I got for that labor. And I own that money because I told an employer, I said, I'm willing to work for $10 an hour building mice for you for people to use. And they said, we'll hire you for $10 an hour. So what does that mean again? If you said that means they would rather have my labor than their $10 per hour, and I would rather have their $10 an hour than, my time, I guess, and my labor. If that's what you said, then please go to the head of the class. You got it correct. Again, fundamentally, this is how every single transaction works. So then we get to where maybe I have accumulated enough money, I buy an extra house. So then I buy a house, I fix it up, I put it on the market, and I want $1,200 a month rent. So then you come along and you say, I would like to rent this place. And you say, well, this looks very nice. It's in a nice neighborhood. You did a great job of renovating it because you're so awesome using all those tools. I'm just kidding. But that is kind of true because I am a landlord. So, but you might really like the house and you might say, but $1,200 is a bit steep. So you might try to negotiate with me. Now, if it's a big mega corporation, negotiation is going to be out. But if it's a smaller landlord, there might be some room to negotiate, perhaps. So you might say, would you be willing to take $1,100 a month? And I tell you what, you might say, I'm willing to give you, you're asking for, I'm just making up numbers here. You're asking that you, as the potential renter, might be looking at it and saying, well, I would like to pay you $1,100 a month, and I've got $700 that I can give you as a, to hold. I'm trying to blank on the word at the moment, but $700 I will put down for you to hold on to, and then and you're only asking for $300, but I'll give you $700, and I would like to pay you $1,100 in rent. because that's what I can afford every month, and I feel confident. And I might look at that and I go, since it's my house, I might look at it and say, you know what? I think I'll take that deal for whatever reason, right? Because it's mine. I can do that. That's how it works. Now, mega corporations can do the same thing if they wanted. They just choose not to. But everybody has that potential to negotiate a price in a transaction, right? It's at least on the table, unless the government says no, right? But it's on the table at least, unless they've said no, which it's still on the table. Technically, they're just telling you no, okay? So this is the guiding principle that I have. I say, look, people should be able to negotiate these terms. And because they can negotiate, then that means this landlord here might be extra high, and I can compete with them. So that landlord over there, maybe they're down the block and they're charging $1,600. And let's say I initially was charging $1,500, but I wasn't getting any bites and they weren't getting any bites. Then I might be able to lower my price down to $1,100, and then I'll be able to better compete with them. This is why libertarians love the free market and capitalism, because these kind of decisions can be made. I can respond to the world around me as it's happening. But if the government says, oh, the max you can charge is $900, well, then they've cut off some of that competition, because 900 is the most that I can get. 900 is the most that they can get. Now, they might have a slightly bigger home. They might have a slightly nicer home, right? Maybe they did some different renovations. Maybe they, hired an illegal immigrant, whatever. Okay? So they're maybe trying to charge $1,200. I'm just making up numbers again. And maybe I might say, well, I'll charge $1,000, right? And I can get my 1,000. They can get their 1,200 perhaps. We're charging different, and the people are maybe living literally on the same block. That's how a free market works. It allows people to negotiate, to compete, and to adjust to the situation. If both of us, if they're trying to rent it for $1,200 and I'm trying to rent it for $1,100, and it's been on the market for like 6 months, we might automatically, if we're wise, start lowering our price and saying, okay, clearly people want their $1,200 or their $1,100 more than they want to rent our house. So we're going to have to make an adjustment. That's how it negotiates. So the free market effectively can negotiate even when somebody's not talking to you, especially when somebody's not talking to you. So that's how a libertarian would approach this. We would say, we wouldn't freeze the rent. We're not going to get involved because it's not ours to freeze.